of things, or from the psychological side of things. And there's three different types of people. There's the ignorant optimist, okay, that thinks that everything is awesome all the time and everything's going to continue to be awesome. Then you've got the panicking pessimist, okay, and those are people that never pull the trigger and never do anything because they're paralyzed by the data, okay. And then you've got the realist, and I like to call them the opportunistic realist. So over the course of the last 17, 18 years, I've been one of each of these guys, okay? I started out the ignorant optimist until 2008, and I got smoked, okay? When lost all my rentals, had a ton of flips going, and got wiped out. I then became a panicking pessimist, right? Because now I'm like, everybody hates, real estate is horrible, and I lost everything, and I don't want anything to do with it. So I missed opportunities like, helping Pangea Ventures build their 10,000 units because I thought those guys were nuts for buying real estate in 2009, right? Or to compliment Andrew Holmes, when he was off buying or building a rental portfolio in 2010, 2011, I was busy focused on just commissions because I'm like, I don't want to own real estate again. Why would I go through that again, right? Now I've evolved into the opportunistic realist, which is somebody that looks at the data carefully, and then strikes based off of the data. Okay. One thing we did, I'm blessed with a great partner. Jeffrey Kirshner ran operations for Invitation Homes in the Midwest. The guy bought 4,200 homes for them, managed the construction, oversaw the property management and leasing, all that. He's very data driven. So he balanced me out when we partnered up 4 years ago. And the first thing he said when all this started to shake out was, we are going to focus on data and not emotions. Okay, we're not going to be emotional through this. Because if you get emotional through this, meaning COVID and everything going on and what's happening in the economy, you're going to freeze up and you're going to make poor decisions, right? So we've been operating off of data this whole time. So if you're flipping, this is the advice we gave our clients. Finish your projects. Now, again, remember, this was in the beginning, right? And then you're going to see where I go with the charts. We're telling our clients, finish your projects, get them on the market, and be aware of the inventory. Okay, this was now, at this point, 10 weeks ago. Okay, we said, be aware of the inventory because the inventory is going to be the driver as to what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months. Okay, for our clients that own rentals, we told them, screen your tenants. If you've got properties that you're going to be leasing up that were vacant and now you're leasing them, screen your tenants like never before. Okay, we certainly can't steer or redline or tell you where to invest or where not to invest, yada, yada, yada. But the advice we gave our clients was screen your tenants like never before because vacancy is going to become an issue. Delinquency was going to become a big issue, right? Because tenants weren't going to be able to pay. So screen your tenants like never before. Talk to your tenants. So build relationships with them, but get on the horn with them and get ahead of things because this was before the stimulus. This was before everything. Once your tenants aren't able to pay, then we knew you were going to be in a world of hurt, right? Because if you can't pay your lender, then what, right? And then we said, talk to your lenders. Get on the horn. If you've got commercial financing or you're dealing with a hard money lender, get on the horn with them. Pick up the phone and talk to them and don't hide because the worst thing you can do with a lender is hide because then you know what? Then you're on their poop list and they're going to come after you. If you're communicating with them and you let them know where you stand, what your workout plan is, what you're looking to do, then obviously you can navigate what was going on. So that was our advice 10 weeks ago. To our clients that were liquid, we told them, assess your business plan, talk to your lenders because we knew once all this started to shake out, and I'm sure you remember this, but the commercial side of lending completely froze. It was like overnight, some big lenders that we work with disappeared, right? And closings that were supposed to happen didn't happen. And clients were freaking out and they're like, what do I do now? So for our clients that were cash heavy, we said, start to talk to your lenders. And where we were heading with that was be prepared because the data obviously will shake out and I'm going to get into it. But if this is going to be anything like 2008, all the gurus on Facebook were like, oh yeah, now's the time to buy, blah, blah, blah. They're 12 months early. If the data is pointing to what's going to happen in the marketplace and the economy, all those guys are 12 months early, okay? The properties have to go through the cycle, and especially like in states in Illinois, you have to go through the foreclosure, okay, and then once it becomes REO, then there's a redemption period in the state of Illinois, and you could talk more to that. But it takes time. I mean, when I was listing REOs, I'd get assigned an asset, and sometimes just the redemption period is 6 to 9 months, right? So for these clients that all of a sudden, or not clients, but people that we're now working out forbearance plans or whatever, we're not seeing foreclosure spike. Okay. You have to see foreclosure spike, and then REOs will spike, and then everything else will spike. But it takes time. It's not a 30-day process. So for all these gurus that were online, they're like, oh, now's the time to buy. Oh, there's so many properties. It's not what the data says. Okay. And Gary, if you want to interject at any point, you just tell me. Raise your hand and say something.
I do have one piece of information I want to add in this segment. And it's something I feel very strongly and passionately about. The term short sale is a very sexy term. And, whenever investors hear edge, HUD deal, foreclosure, short sale, they flock to those terms like hyenas because they're theoretically deemed to be something that is an asset that you can purchase at a discount. For investors who are engaged in wholesaling, or for investors who aren't sure whether or not they're going to close on an asset, and maybe they only have the ability to buy one property at a time, I want people to just be aware. And I mean, maybe this goes back to Rosario, what we talked at the beginning about, which is our social duty. These are real people that are in very dire financial circumstances, and they're on the verge of foreclosure. This is their last opportunity. And when you put in an offer to buy someone's house, they're making real life decisions based on that offer. And when you affix your signature on the bottom of the contract, you have certain obligations and duties because people are changing their life, and it may be the last chance that they're able to sell that house before they lose it in foreclosure, and they lose everything and they file bankruptcy. And I have seen investors who will cavalierly place offers on short sales, and then after 3 or 4 months of negotiations of a short sale, they start asking for credits, or they decide they're going to back out. And that's a pretty heavy burden that you're putting on a person. So just recognize that this is an important thing. When you do that, you have every right as an investor to back out. Maybe you're only going to lose your earnest money, but you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say that you theoretically destroyed someone that was otherwise had one chance to get rid of that property. So we have obligation as investors, as attorneys, as realtors, to act in a way that is socially responsible.
I thank you for sharing that. So I personally, we work inversely with the market, meaning our best years as a company, we've been around since 2009. We rebranded as Clickinvest, or to Clickinvest in 2017. But prior to that, we were a company called Resurrecting Real Estate. That was our original name. And we focused primarily on REO properties, distressed assets, all that. Our strongest years were in the recession and coming out of the recession because there's so much inventory. So we work inversely, because if there's a ton of inventory, well, then we can fill our clients' orders, right? And as the market was appreciating, it became harder and harder for us to win, right? Because inventory is so tight. So with what I feel is coming, we should be dancing on the rooftop, right? Like, oh my gosh, we're going to crush it. We have all this inventory come in and we can leverage our tools and all that. Guys, in total transparency, there are days I want to quit and get out of this industry because it makes my stomach turn thinking about what's going to happen. Because when you've been on the REO side of things and you have to go into a house of someone that's been evicted and their stuff's on the street, you don't lose or you don't forget those images, okay? Or little kids sitting outside, with their toys in hand and the sheriff's there. Like, this is not a good thing. And if you go around saying, there's gonna be plenty of opportunities and we're gonna kill it, you're a jackass and you are insensitive. And, God help you, because people are going to lose everything and get completely wiped out. And unless you're going to come alongside and help them, then don't send the letters. I mean, when I lost everything, I pivoted, and then we started doing, we were sending out mailers to people that were in pre-foreclosure and all that. And I gave them an option. If I can't give you a good enough offer, I'll list it for you and help you try to sell it, right? So I thought outside the box. And for you guys that are wholesalers, think like that. You should be licensed now, right? In Illinois, if you're a wholesaler, aren't you supposed to be licensed or something?
Yep.
Right? So offer that. If you can't give them a fair price, then offer selling it for them, or whatever. So you can go on and on about that. All right. So to our guys that were cash heavy, we told them, assess your business plan, talk to your lenders. More importantly, when I say talk to your lenders, guys with money, what happened in 2008 and 2009, the guys that went in and started scooping up the opportunities, right, and the deals were guys that had bank relationships, local bank relationships, because the commercial lending space tightened up back then, right? I mean, the hard money lenders that I was working with in 2007 were gone. So if you're a strong buyer, you want to build that relationship with the local banks. Find out the local banks in your area that like investors, that are investor friendly, and build those relationships, because that's going to be your greatest ally when you go in and you start buying, certainly, rental opportunities. Commercial lending right now is still fine. But again, I'm talking about 12 months from now, okay? Like right now, a lot of these lenders came back in and it's like business as usual for a good chunk of them. I'm talking about what's going to happen, in my opinion. So you want to position yourself as an investor that knows what they're talking about. And those conversations and relationships need to start getting nurtured now than you running at them when the market turns and they're like, okay, should have been having that conversation 6 months prior. So, and then improve your systems. Right when COVID started, we said, watch your spend. Now is not the time to start spending money on shiny pennies or shiny, silver bullets and to come up with new ideas in this. Gary Keller came out with a book, and you actually turned me on to it, was The Shift, right? Going back to 2008, 2009, talking about what to do in a market where things change rapidly, right? So, and the big deal back then was the relationships you currently have, go deeper with those relationships, and the systems that are working, go deeper with those systems. Don't start, spreading your capital too thin and trying new things out, because you're going to need every dollar you have to be ready for what's to come. Okay, makes sense? Oh, when I click on it, it comes up with it's like a little horn. All right, so this was 10 weeks ago. Again, my partner, Jeffrey Kirshner, he's the data guy. He goes into all the data, extrapolates the data, and then comes back and says, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we need to be going. So 10 weeks ago, new listing activity in the Chicago market. As you can see here, 2020 is in the gray, 2019 was in the orange. So and if you look at the bottom, this is the week of the year, okay? 9th week, 10th week, 11th week, 12th week of the year. And this is the number of units in the counties that we cover, okay? We didn't do all of Illinois. We just focused on the counties that we cover, okay? So if you see here, right when this came out, COVID, wham, just straight decline, right? What's really neat about working in two markets, you're going to see how the two markets compare, right? You got Central Florida and you got Illinois, and it's going to be really interesting what you see here. So under contract, so these are the number of contracts or properties that went under contract in the 10th week, 11th week, and 12th week of the year. In WAMO, you start to see, okay, the number of properties going under contract come off. Closings by the week. So closings are a lag measure. And what we mean by lead and lag, what happens in a lag measure is it trails. All right. So you have new listings coming, and then you have properties that go under contract. Closings will tend to follow 3 to 4 weeks in the lag behind. Okay. So we didn't see an immediate shift. We did start to see a little dip here, right? But you'll see where it ends up going. And I don't know about you, Gary, but man, March was, once this started to come out, it was like deal after deal after deal after deal was getting canceled, right? And we were working like heck to try to save what we could. So this is what Jeff, so Jeff sat down, spent a ton of time going through the data, and he goes, this is what I think is going to happen.
I love this one. This is my favorite chart that you have. I love this one.
So he goes, well, hey, why are we going to reinvent the wheel? Let's look at China. China at the time was 4 weeks ahead of us, right? 4 to 6 weeks ahead of us. So he goes, let's see what happened there. And, you know, that's really the only chart we can go off of. And let's just base it off of that and see what happens, right? And Jeff's a lot more intelligent than I am. So he's got a lot of other reasons why. But he looked at this and said, okay, well, based off of China, right, they went to near zero. Okay, these were property sales in the 30 major cities in China. Okay, so right when all this started to go down in China, which roughly was, you know, after the first of the year, they just went off a cliff, and then they started to come back. All right, and if you see this here, so you said, okay, 4, 6, wow, 8 weeks, they're going to fully recover almost, or get back into trend, right? So let's look at what happened, so this is what Jeff's thesis was, and this is what he said in his opinion was going to happen. So a few considerations for your business, and this is what he sent out to some of our clients. So much will depend on individual circumstances, okay? There are no buyers. This was, again, right when everything happened. We're like, oh gosh, if you got a property on the market, don't do anything because there's no buyers right now. So if you have listings, this is not the time to make any kind of price adjustment. There are no buyers at any price. You are better off keeping the price change powder, so any adjustments you're going to have, dry until the stay-at-home orders are lifted, okay? There is no reason to compete, so look for opportunities and desperate sellers. If a property has multiple offers, don't chase it. Chances are the other investor buyers won't be able to obtain financing, and you'll get another shot at the deal. We had a few John Wayne investors, okay? We had a few guys during that whole thing. We're telling all of our clients, like, should we buy? I'm like, man, go off of what Jeff is saying. Be super aggressive, meaning go for a much larger return and quicker flips. So cosmetic, don't get into any big projects. The majority of our client base went to sleep, right? But we had a few John Wayne guys that went out and stole houses, okay? Not crazy amount, but stole some properties, right? Over the course of like a 4 to 6 week period. And they took a huge risk, and it paid off for a lot of them. So that worked, number 2. And then next we had cash is king. So if you have cash, use it as a weapon. All non-conforming loan secondary markets are very challenging. If the buyer cannot use a government-backed loan product, chances are they cannot find financing. So if you don't have cash, save as much as possible right now. There will be buying opportunity later this summer. All right, so that was 10 weeks ago. All right, so now 10 weeks later, okay, so let's see what happened in Chicago and in Florida. And if you remember that chart from China, it's pretty similar. We didn't go to zero, right? But it's pretty similar. We have this, some say it's a V, more of a U, okay? So this is right where contract activity in Illinois started to drop off. And then we started to see it come back. And then this was nuts. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we got right back in line with the trend from 2019. And then we blew through it, okay? So if you look at this in the 21st week of the year, okay, last year in 2019, there were roughly 1,700 properties that went under contract for that week, okay, in 2019. That same week in 2020, it was 2,100. All right, so we blew through the trend, and now you've got more contract activity than we've seen in quite some time. Florida exploded. Okay, so Central Florida, if you see, again, two totally different markets, but they followed the same trend. All right. We broke through week 19 over here. Week 19, we met. All right, so we matched up. And then Florida just kept on trucking. So Florida, obviously different market, but still very similar when you look at it from a chart perspective, right?
You know, it's really interesting to watch this because some of the early webinars and Zoom meetings that I was holding, I was not forecasting. I was just giving people data, and I was saying, look, some of my larger clients, some of my private equity groups, my hedge funds, et cetera, all of my smaller investors, they stopped for the most part purchasing. But the larger institutional clients, right at the beginning said, hey, we're going to buy, we're just going to continue to buy on the downswing, and we're going to ride the upswing up. And I didn't really understand what that meant until now I'm seeing this. And, you know, one of the things that I mentioned in the Zoom meetings and the webinars is I said, I don't know that I understand it. I don't know that I can comprehend it, but I do know that these guys have a bunch of people from Harvard and MIT running their organizations.
Yep.
That are doing all this modeling. So this is very, very interesting to see this now that that's actually come to fruition.
Now, understand, this is contract activity. This has nothing to do with the sales price. So this is just the number of contracts that went under contract per week over the course of COVID, okay? From a sales price perspective, we have not moved. In a lot of markets, we've gone up, okay? Because inventory continues to get squeezed. So and I'll get into that in a second, but I'm like, wow, all this craziness happening in the world, right? And real estate prices are going up because it comes down to basic economics. It's supply and demand. If the supply continues to shrink and there's demand in the market and we're not recovering it from the inventory perspective, prices can only go up. That's it. We had a property, crazy. So it got listed right in the heart of COVID and then didn't go anywhere. Then we took it off the market. We made some adjustments to it, relisted it. And within 3 days, mind you, there was nothing happening with it before. Within 3 days, we had 3 offers and it went for $5,000 over list price. And at the time, the client was like, oh, should we come off? I said, no, let's test the market because there's no inventory and let's see what happens. And somebody came in $5,000 over list. The other 2 offers were at list or just below list. Because
Guys,
there's
if you've never taken a macro or microeconomics class, Rosario's given it to you in about 5 minutes here. And it's literally scarcity creates pressure on the market and increases the purchase price. Yep. You just look at what happened with toilet paper and hand sanitizer. There was demand, therefore people hoarded or prices increased. Yep. Same thing's going on with real estate.
Are you and Pastor calling Daniel?
Already mute this person. There. All right, muted him. All right, so new listings. Now this is scary, okay? So you have properties that are being absorbed. So a lot of times we look at the absorption rate and how many properties are being absorbed by the buyers in the marketplace, right? You want to see the listing inventory and the properties going under contract. You want to see that balanced out. So then you have a healthy market. This is not a healthy market. It's healthy from a price perspective. It's not healthy for what's going to happen because prices are going to continue to go up. And you may be like, that's a good thing. No, it's not. We're setting, when you look at the market from 10 years ago or I'm sorry, when you look at 2006, 2007, the peak of the market prior to the recession, we're well above that right now. That's not a good thing, because I don't know about you guys, or if you guys have full-time jobs or whatever, or wages and salaries haven't skyrocketed in the same way that home prices have. So this is going to create an issue, okay? So if you look at here, new listings in Chicago, week by week, we started to come up, and then people are like, well, what happened? I don't understand this chart. Here's what happened. COVID hits, people don't want to list their homes. Why don't they want to list their homes? Because they don't want people walking into their homes during COVID, right? So this is where this crazy dip happened. And now, all right, safer at home orders are being lifted. All this stuff is starting to be lifted. And we saw a pop here over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, okay? But then it started to flatten out. And now in Chicago, it's starting to come off again. And that worries me, okay? If you look at Florida, same thing. It popped. All of a sudden, we started to run up week 17, 18, 19, and now starting to come off again. So properties are getting gobbled up right now by consumers, but we're not catching up from an inventory perspective. So prices are going to continue to go up, and inventory is going to continue to get squeezed. Closing activity, I don't have the last 2 weeks here. I didn't pull it, but closing activity, you could just anticipate this continuing to climb, because again, it's a lag measure. So if we have a pop in contracts, we're going to certainly have a pop in closing activity as well. Pending sales, I thought this was really interesting. So this goes to show you the 7-day rolling average. So if you see, again, it's just further data confirming where we're at. We've recovered, okay? So pending sales, this is the amount of properties that were being sold, all right, pre-COVID-19. And I don't want to say post-COVID-19, because we're still dealing with it. But if you look here, we recovered. And for you guys, if you're not aware of this, we were headed for the best spring market on record, okay, in history. So what's happening now? Now we're catching, or we're coming right back to where the spring market should have been, okay, because we lost an 8-week period, a 10-week period, whatever. So now we're making up for that spring market that was lost. But then we're also, if you think about it, you have buyers that have been sitting in their home for 8 weeks, and all of a sudden, what do you think they're doing? They're looking at their condo or the little house, or maybe they're renting, and they're like, we're getting the heck out of here. Now their home has become a much greater asset in their lives, right? Because the thought of having to stay there for an extended period of time is now causing a lot of those people to go out and want to buy a new home. Sorry, are you checking questions here? Because I'm not looking at the chat at all.
I am. Yeah, I'm watching it.
Okay. All right. So if you see something there and you want to interrupt me, just let me know. Now here's what's really interesting. So this is taken into consideration. I know you guys see a lot of squiggly lines. I like to keep it simple. Look at the top over here, then you've got the dip, and then look at the top over here. All right. That's where you see the recovery is happening. So these are pending sales, again, for 7-day rolling average in multiple markets across the country. If you look at Tampa, clearly recovered. Look at Chicago. You see this, it gets jumbled up here, almost fully recovered in terms of sales, okay? Houston, gotta love Texans. They're blowing through. So they're beyond recovery right now. They're exploding. This is where they were pre-COVID-19, and now their pending sales are here. So they're skyrocketing. The only market, from what I remember when I was going through this, I think it was Boston, hasn't completely recovered, and then look at Charlotte. Don't know what's happening there in North Carolina. So out of these markets, almost every single one of them has recovered, and 2 of them have exploded, okay, past recovery. So today, this is what Jeff had to say a few weeks ago. So you fast forward, right? And I love the guy, because then you can just see where his mind was. So he goes, okay, housing is fully recovered.
Sorry, hold on one sec. I'm going to interrupt you for a second. because we have about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Rosario mentioned, for people who have questions, feel free to put on the Zoom group chat the questions, and once Rosario gets done here, we'll start knocking some of those questions out for you. So go ahead and start adding those questions now. Go ahead, Rosario.
And then what I'll do too, at the end of this, I have a link that I'll drop into the chat box. If you guys click on the link and fill out that information, twofold. One, you'll get added to our buyers list. Two, we'll include you in email correspondence that we send out on a weekly basis so you can see stuff like this. And then three, Tommy Schrey is going to call you. I have to disclose that. Tommy Schrey is going to call everybody. That's how Tommy Schrey rolls. Okay. So I figured I'd disclose that. All right. So housing has fully recovered. The fallout from the initial COVID response has now worked its way through the housing market. We need to shift our focus to monitoring inventory, which was what was the big talk when we first started, and the overall economy. A strong pace of recovery is bullish for housing. A relapse or continued long-term unemployment will be bearish for housing. No one knows which scenario will occur, and continued monitoring is our only defense. Eviction moratorium is a huge risk for rentals. I know that. I mean, I don't know the latest news in Chicago as to what's going on there, but the talk of it and where do things stand right now? Because I know a few weeks ago there was all sorts of chatter. Can you speak to that or no?
Nothing's currently passed that I'm aware of. Anybody wants to make a comment, they can on the group chat, but I don't believe there's been anything that's actually been enacted yet.
Okay. And then last point he had was don't discount intervention. It is likely that government intervention will reach $10 trillion. What are we at right now? 3 point something? So Jeff thinks we've got multiple rounds to go. Okay. So that will be supportive for asset prices going forward, including residential real estate. So we don't know. I mean, we're in uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to happen, right? But if we go off of data, we can take a whack at it. So here's the problem. Now we're getting into future stuff. All right. All that's leading up to where we are and then where we're going. And I'll blow through these to give you guys so that we can make sure we're respectful of time. Here's the problem. Supply of homes for sale fell to 1.47 million units in April. Okay. That's nearly 20% lower than the same time period a year ago. All right. And the lowest April inventory figure ever. So April's existing home sales are the lowest level of sales since July 2010 and the largest month-over-month drop since July 2010. So when I keep talking about inventory here, and you saw in the charts, inventory continues to get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and that is not a good thing. Today's home buyers are chasing a dwindling number of homes for sale, and that's why prices are rising. So home sale prices continue to go up. There's a demand among buyers, but there aren't enough homes on the market, okay? Which is why we've been preaching to our clients, quicker turns, cosmetic, get it done, get it on the market because there's no inventory. Investor problem. So I think this was 2019's number. 104,000 investors flipped about 250,000 homes in 2019 across the United States. That's single family residential. So that's roughly like a two and a half flips per investor ratio. Okay. So the average flipper did 2.5 flips in 2019. Does that make sense? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem though. So if you go off of that, they bought 250,000 homes. That was in 2019. Because inventory levels are getting so squeezed, distress sales, foreclosures, and short sales represented 3% of sales in April. Only 3% of the total sales. Okay. So that's about even with March 2020, April 2019. So assume that. So going off of it, just follow me on the math here. Going off of the 1.4 million units, okay, if only 3% of that are REOs and short sales, that means there's about 40,000 distressed homes in the entire United States for 104,000 investors. You get that? That's why it's a firefight right now for investors to find inventory because it continues to get squeezed. and everything's multiple offers. Okay. iBuyers. All right. This was a slide I had from last year. I threw it in here just to give you guys an idea about iBuyers. So iBuyers are, look at them this way. It's Wall Street. It's Wall Street coming in, gobbling up single family homes. Okay. And when COVID hit, the iBuyers went to sleep. And a lot of investors I know are like, oh my gosh, if the iBuyers are gone, this is huge. Now we can come back to the market and we can dominate and blah, 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 blah. Because iBuyers were scooping up deals left and right while the iBuyers are back. Okay. And time will tell to see how things shake out, if all of them are going to stay in the game or there's going to be some sort of consolidation or whatnot. But this is what I want you guys to pay attention to. Zillow, okay, when they came on the scene, so Open Door, OfferPad, those were the big players in the iBuyer space, okay? Then Zillow decided, hey, we want to jump in. And Zillow's long-term goal, okay, based off of their CEO, things that he said, they want to get to the point where they're buying 5,000 homes a month, okay? 5,000 homes a month. They've already surpassed OfferPad. OfferPad, I think, was buying a couple thousand homes a year, something like that. And Zillow's already blown past them in a short amount of time. And if you think of Zillow, every time somebody thinks about real estate, where do they go? They go to Zillow for the most part, right? Zillow controls more eyeballs than any other website out there. So for them, it's not about making a profit, because I don't think they've made money to date. I think they continue to lose money as a company. So people that we know on the inside, this is what's scary. They say Zillow makes about, on a good day, I mean, we'll see. I mean, their long-term goal is to make about 1 to 2% return on their money. 1 to 2%. That's a return on investment. Our average client is looking for anywhere from 10, depending on the market, 10 to 12 to 15% ROI, okay, return on investment. Zillow is looking at 1 to 2%. How do you compete against that? I don't know how you compete against that. Do you know how to compete against that, Gary? No, of course not. So that's a scary thing, because now as an investor, you already saw the inventory is shrinking, the competition is fierce, and then you've got iBuyers at the same time that you're competing against that are taking margins that are ridiculous. Okay. OfferPad, before Zillow came into the picture, they were falling between 7 and 9% ROI on their deals that they were scooping up. And they were focused more on cosmetics. So they were buying properties right from homeowners, rehabbing them, minor cosmetic rehabs, and then throwing them right back on the market. This should say can't. So if you can't find them, then build them. JP Morgan, I thought this was really interesting, partnered with American Homes for Rent, okay? And they put together a fund, $625 million fund to go out and build 2,500 rental properties in the south and southeast parts of the country, okay? And this is leading to where I'm going with all this, all right? Are we finally getting to this part? Wasn't this what the whole thing was about?
This was the topic.
That was the topic. So we'll get into it in the last 5 minutes. So here's where I think is going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but based of me being, in the institutional space for years and being around guys and hedge funds and all that. So if JP Morgan Chase, okay, is going out and building rental homes right now, new construction, what are they preparing for? Okay. 5 years ago, I was at an event where it was mostly institutional buyers. Okay. And the CEO of one of the biggest hedge funds out there that's buying stood up and said, our goal is to make every American a tenant. Okay. If you know anything about the multifamily market over the last 20 years, okay, the multifamily space was predominantly mom and pop. 70% of the multi-unit properties across the United States were owned by regular people like you guys, okay, you and I. So 70% of the stock was owned by mom and pops. Now it's the exact opposite. 70% is owned by institutions, okay? If you look at The rental properties that are owned across the United States, it's the same thing. 70% of the rental properties owned across the country are owned by mom and pops. That's going to change, okay? Institutions are not going to stop gobbling up properties. Jobless claims. I think this was before last week's number, so we broke 40 million, okay? How do you have 40 million people file for unemployment and that not affect the economy in the long run? We've never seen numbers like this, I think, going back to the Depression, okay? That's going to wreak havoc on the economy. We're not going to be able to get away from that. Here is a number that everybody needs to be paying attention to. And again, this was 2 weeks ago, so this is probably already higher, maybe closer to 10%. 8.8% of the U.S. mortgages are in forbearance, okay? 8.8% of U.S. mortgages are in forbearance. So that's about 4.7 million mortgages, okay? 4.7 million mortgages. Now, I don't want to say nobody's talking about this, but down here in Central Florida, 85% of the vacation rentals were vacant. 85% of them across the entire state were vacant. If you know anything about Airbnb, we are not big advocates of Airbnb, okay? I like to look at a deal in 3 ways. Can you flip it? Great. Can you keep it as a rental? Great. If Airbnb is your third option, fine. But if you can't check the first 2 boxes, don't buy the house. Because if your investment potential is predicated on the fact of what we're dealing with right now, everything being perfect and everything being awesome, your returns are going to be minimal. And if something happens and you can't rent it out in a traditional format, you're going to get whooped. And what's happened now, especially in Central Florida and in markets across Florida, is these people that bought Airbnb properties hoping that they'll get a 3% return on their money or 4% return on their money annually or 5%, whatever it was. That return was based off of or predicated on March and April, okay? Because those were the hottest months of the year for Airbnb. Well, guess what they just lost? March and April. So there's going to be a tsunami of short-term rentals that are going to go into default. In addition to the forbearance, the properties that are currently in forbearance. 2008, 9, and 10. Look at this. This is very interesting. So I just shared a stat with you saying 8.8% of the mortgages were in forbearance. Look at what percent of the mortgages, okay, or of the homes went into foreclosure back in 2009, 10, 2008, 9, 10, and 11. If you add that number up, it's pretty darn close to the amount of properties that are currently in forbearance. Add that number up, 1.84, 2.21. So this is roughly what, 4%, 6.25%. No, is that right? Yeah, we're at like 9 something if you add 2012 as well, okay? So when you add these numbers up, this was the foreclosure rate in the United States from 2005 to 2019, and this was the peak of it. So if history repeats itself, I pray that a lot of these forbearances get worked out, okay? But if they don't and the forbearance rate continues to climb, I don't think it's unjustified, or I don't think it's out of place to say that we may see a foreclosure rate when you add those years up that is equal to the amount of properties that are currently in forbearance or that will continue to go into forbearance. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Gary?
It makes sense.
Okay. So when Wall Street is your landlord, this was just an article that I pulled out of the Atlantic, but basically it's my prediction where I think things are going to go. There's 95 single family homes in the United States. Okay. 2% are currently owned by institutions. When I say institutions, that's the hedge funds, that's Wall Street. Okay. So 1.9 million homes are owned by Wall Street. My guess is when all this shakes out over the next 5 to 7 years, that's going to go up to about 7%. Okay. So that's 7 million properties owned by Wall Street in the next 5 to 7 years. The big question is, where are those properties going to come from? Are they going to come out of REO and short sales, or are they going to come from taking over a lot of these properties from investors that aren't able to make their payments when tenants stop paying, right? or forbearance plans don't work out, or whatever it may be. So I think it's going to come from everywhere. But again, this is my I don't have a crystal ball, so this is my throwing a dart at a dartboard. This is what I think is going to happen in the next 9 to 12 months. I think inventory is going to pop. I think because of the forbearances that are not going to get worked out, there's going to be a huge spike in foreclosures, which is then going to lead to REO inventory, which is then going to look a lot like 2008, 9, 10, and 11. But now, what's very different from now compared to 2008, 9, 10, and 11, now these hedge funds have operations in place all across the country. And I'm sorry, guys, and this is going to piss off my REO broker friends, I don't think these properties are going to go to traditional route. I don't think they're going to go short sale, then REO, then share sale, then REO, and then go to an REO agent, and then get passed to normal people like you and I. Unfortunately, I think they're going to get backdoored. And what I mean backdoored, I think there's going to be a lot of tapes that are being sold to big hedge funds, because if I'm a bank, why am I going to deal with all the onesie, twosie investors across the country? I'm going to give 100 property clips at a time, or 1,000 property clips at a time, to big hedge funds and be rid of them. So that's what I think is going to happen. If anybody's got questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'm sorry, I ran past the hour. One last thing.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
American billionaires got $434 billion.
If you go past 70 minutes, we're going to start calling you Frank Montreux.
Okay, we got to shut it down then. American billionaires got $434 billion richer during the pandemic. Okay. Isn't that interesting? Here we are as a people, right, as American folks here, clawing ourselves out of this, trying to claw ourselves out of this, and we'll be clawing ourselves out of this for a while, guys. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And so we're trying to figure out what the next step is and all this and that. And these guys just continue to get richer through the whole thing. So just take the blinders off, swallow the pill. It's the matrix. That's what we're living in. And that's all I got, Gary. So if anybody's got questions, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. We're gonna go through a couple of questions. I have one comment on all your stuff that I find interesting. I don't know if this is a true analogy or not, but I like to use Castle Law as kind of a cross section of America insofar as we received payroll protection about the middle of April. And assuming that all other small businesses across the United States received the same payroll protection in the middle of April, that payroll protection is for a 60-day period. So when we hear all of the different politicians calling for reopening of the economy, in many ways it's tied to that, because if Castle Law received their PPP in the middle of April, and that's what's allowing us to keep all of our employees employed when we have, say, a 30 or 40% loss of income because the courthouses are closed, or whatever particular industry you're in, right? Mm-hmm. That means that here in about a week and a half, the subsidy that we've received, that assistance from the federal government, dries up. So as an owner of a business that employs, 40 to 50 people, in the middle of June, I have a decision to make. And that is if we're down 40% as a business owner, as a small business owner, my payroll is a couple $250,000 a month, $200,000 a month. Got a lot of lawyers that work for me. Mm-hmm. I don't have that kind of carry. Target has that kind of carry. JP Morgan has that kind of carry. Home Depot has that kind of carry. Gary Davidson doesn't have that kind of carry. And most of the small businesses, and most of the small businesses across the United States don't have that sort of carry. So when you're watching the different Sunday news talk shows and you're hearing the politicians talking about, we have to get this economy reopened. It's not a political statement I'm making. It's an interesting perspective that in the trenches, I know that I've been artificially boosted for a 60-day period. Yet if I have to lay off my employees and I have to cut staff, that money that was given to me just artificially propped up our economy, and things could head back in the tank. So I just would make the observation that the next 2 to 6 to 8 weeks will really be a telltale sign on what's going to happen, because all of these small businesses are going to be losing that PPP, and they will have either gotten to the point where they're back on their feet or they won't. And if I have to lay off 40% of my staff, that would necessitate a direct impact on other businesses, the economy, real estate, and everything else.
Okay, so here's a wake-up call. Well, really quick, I posted a link in the box here, guys, in the chat box. I hope you guys can see it. If you guys want market updates similar, obviously I pulled a ton of information, but a lot of that information we send out in market updates as well. So if you want information like this, click on the link that I just posted there, fill out that information, and then we'll get you updates like this on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's not every week, but you'll get the picture. All right, so here's a wake-up call. I've been doing this since 2003. Okay, again, have made a lot of money, have lost a lot of money. When the market, before COVID, we were coasting well. When I say coasting well, it was still a grind and we were doing our thing, but we had a ton of staff, still got a ton of staff. But I am working more today than I have in 7 years, okay? I mean, it's not uncommon for me to work 70 hours a week again and busting my butt and working until 10 o'clock at night. I am running harder than I'd like to run, because I know what's coming. And if you applied for PPP and you got your PPP and you're tapping into it like a madman and you just think you're on an extended vacation, you're toast. Give it a few more weeks. You're not going to survive. If you didn't figure out how to make money during this, okay, and keep your PPP in place, obviously use some of it towards staff because you had to, otherwise it becomes an unforgivable loan. But if you don't figure out how to make money right now, you're going to be in trouble, okay? Because you got to learn how to make money in the hardest market. And in my opinion, this is a very hard market because inventory is so tight, and investors need inventory, to flip or to buy rentals. Attorneys need inventory to transact. Agents need inventory to transact. So everybody's, it was hard pre-COVID. Yeah, I know, Ron. If it was hard pre-COVID, it's going to get harder post-COVID. Okay. So my point is, we are building out the vertical. So we're looking at our business and we're saying, where are places in our business that we can increase our revenue with very little cost, okay, to start that side or this side or whatever. So you have to have different streams of income. Thank you, Robin. So you have to be looking at your business and saying, how do I diversify? But how do I also not go spending a lot of money? Because the mistake people make when things get tight is they buy everything, meaning, oh my gosh, look at the amount of Facebook ads, okay? Everybody's an Amazon guru or Bitcoin or this or that or that. And people are spending money on stuff that they shouldn't be spending money on, and they're hoping that one of those things work out. When in reality, what you should be doing is doubling down on your current business, okay? And focusing and investing in what was working before and figure out how to make it work on less, if that makes sense, okay? You have to figure out how to make it work on less people, less money, figure it out. I mean, we're taking on listings down here in Florida. We're built a construction company now in Illinois, and we're building one down here in Florida as well. So we're looking at the things that are already part of our supply chain, right? And we're saying, oh, wait, we can pull that piece in, and we can pull that piece in, and we can pull that piece in. So I broke 70 minutes. Are you going to yell at me?
That's okay. That's okay. Rosario, for those questions that we weren't able to handle and address, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Oh, that would help.
Or if you want to just type it in for us.
Yeah, fill out that link. That's the easiest way because we'll get all your info. There's my email address. So if you have some specific questions or something, you can just shoot me an email right there. I'd give you my phone number, but I'd be totally lying if I told you I'd answer the call. I mean, we are running very hard right now. So I am trying to focus on our current clientele and what we got going on, and just preparing for the months ahead. So, yeah. So shoot me an email, or if you want market updates and all that, click on that link. I added a few chats up.
Thanks so much, Rosario. And my marketing director, Michael, has put up a couple of links for everyone. If you like the Castle Law Facebook page, you can get Facebook news for off-market properties, podcasts, and other things impacting the real estate community. Sign up for our YouTube channel. And of course, just keep watching the Castle Law Zoom Crossfire. Once we get into our new office, we'll be live in studio again. Guys, thanks so much. I have gratitude to each one of you. It's good to have all of you as friends, clients, colleagues. I hope this is of value. If there's anything that you want to hear about, know about, information that you think would be valuable for us to discuss, send me an email, gdavidson@castlelaw.com. Michael put that up. This is Gary Davidson. This is the Castle Law Zoom Crossfire, where we're here to help you create that life worth living, that legacy worth leaving, that business worth owning, and that career worth having. Make it a great day, guys.
Thank you, Gary. Take care, guys.
Thank you.